soul. God must give us faith if we are to be saved. Where does the Bible teach this? John 6:37 is one place. John 6:37 says, all the Father gives me will come to me. Now you might say, well, that didn't say what you just said. Let me explain it though. Jesus got all these people that have come to him. He just fed 5,000 people. They were impressed. Now they're all coming to him. Some of them didn't believe. And Jesus said, don't be surprised that some don't believe. But know this, all the Father gives me will come to me. Now think about what that means. That means God does something before we do something. The Father gives, and then we come. Later on in that same chapter, he says, no one can come to me unless the Father in heaven draws him. Now that's even different but first he says, all the Father gives will come. All in this group, the ones who are being given by the Father as a gift to the Son, are going to come. The natural result of being given to the Son is that we come. That's the first one. And then later he says, no one can come unless he's drawn by the Father. It's just another way of saying the same thing. No one's going to be able to come. No one can, universal negative. Like, remember I talked about universal negatives a few weeks ago? Talked about if I said no one can ride a bike, and then I walked outside and somebody's riding a bike, guess what? That's no longer a universal negative because I'm wrong. But if Jesus said no one can come, then no one can come. Unless the Father in heaven draws him. And somebody says, well, that doesn't mean God forces them. It just means God woos them. And I'm only making the voice because I'm serious. This is what people say. They get all emotional. That drawing is a wooing. It's not a forcing. Yet as we talked about in Sunday school this morning, if you go over to the book of Acts, it uses the same word. It says Paul and Paul and Silas were wooed into court by the soldiers. No, it says they were dragged into court by the soldiers. It's the same word. They were taken out and beaten to a pulp. And wooed. No. They were dragged. The word typically used in the language was to pull water up out of a well. And nobody stands up at the top of a well. I did this in Sunday school. Nobody stands at the top of a well and says, come on, water. Come on, water. No, you put the bucket down and you drag it up. Literally it says, no one comes to me unless the Father drags him. That's the Greek word. The word draw, drag, unless compel, that's the best word, compel. God is the one who compels us to come. Because by nature we don't want to come. And then he says this, because I've heard people say, well, God draws people and they don't come. Well, if you read the whole verse, it says this. It's John 6:44. No one can come to me unless the Father in heaven draws him, and I will raise him up on the last day. If he's going to raise him up on the last day, the one who's drawn is going to come. And unless you want to say the second hymn is different than the first hymn, then you're saying that there are some people who are drawn who are not coming. And I think I just confused the whole group. So let me start that again. There are two hymns in the passage. The same hymn that is drawn is the one who's raised up. If you're going to say that there are those who are drawn who don't come, then it runs roughshod against the passage, because the passage says everyone who is drawn is raised up. And then way at the end of the chapter, John 6:65, Jesus said, no one can come to me unless the Father in heaven grants it to him. There it is. He's just repeating what he said earlier. But this time he uses the word grants because he wants to make the point. God is the one who opens the heart to believe. God is the one who does it. Which means this. God is not up in heaven holding people back. And I get this, and we're going to talk about this more tomorrow night when I talk about questions. There's people who think, well, if you believe in predestination, you believe that there's a lot of people out there that want to go to heaven, and God's saying, no, no, no. No, I don't. I believe nobody wants to go to heaven, and the only reason anybody ever does is because God reaches into your sinful soul, gives you new life, and pulls you to himself. Not because you're trying to get in, and God's like going, no, I don't want you. The only reason you come is because God loved you enough to reach down and save you. And because he doesn't save everyone does not make him unfair. It displays his justice and his grace together. God had a choice when he created the world. I can choose to give everyone grace, and then no one would go to hell. I can choose to give no one grace, that everybody goes to... I choose to give everyone grace, everybody goes to heaven. I choose to give no one grace, everybody goes to hell. Or I can set my affection upon those whom I choose, and the rest will get their just reward.